All right, hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to your weekly market check-in here with myself, Greta Wall. I'm your host, and I'm joined by Derrick Oldensmith, the head trader at T3 Trading Group and leader of T3 Live's Pro Desk, a virtual trading floor. Before we get into any market-related discussions, here's just a quick disclosure of Derrick's current positions as of our recording here today on August 3rd, 2026. Again, Derrick is the head trader at T3 Trading Group. Derrick, looking at positions here, you have a couple more shorts on than we had last week. The last 2 weeks, the only short you've had is SpaceX. So we'll talk about some of these positions and why you're in them. But title of our stream today being Pro Trader Market Update, because as I mentioned, Derrick is a professional trader, and I just want to get his take on everything that happened in the market last week, and then of course happening this week, because it is another big week of earnings and economic data as well. So first, Derrick, how is your Monday going so far?
It's going really well. I mean, I'm super bullish, and the SPYs are up 1.25%. The Qs are up 1.5%. The IWM is up 1.5%. The technicals of this market, the S&P look beautiful. The IWM looks beautiful, and the Qs are really, really rapidly improving. They do still have a little work to do to prove themselves, but the fact that the Qs are already above Friday's high is really bullish. I just want to see a little more participation from the semiconductors. The semiconductor chart, the SOXX, is still a little bit precarious, and that is the most important sector or subsector for the entire market overall. And I think in order for these SPYs to truly give a breakout, we're going to need to get the semis to participate a little bit better. And while that chart is still pretty broken, I think that the positioning has washed out enough in semiconductors that this can start to work its way higher too. So I'm bullish across the board. You mentioned the extra couple of shorts that you're seeing in my position disclosure. Those are just meant to be little day trades that I have on. They don't represent my bigger picture thought process for the market. It's just it's a really big up day today, and for a lot of the Mag 7 stocks, it's a big day 3 to the upside. So hitting a point here where I'm putting on just some like cute little shorts to try to make a few extra dollars for myself intraday, but make no mistake about it, the big picture here, I'm still pretty darn bullish.
Let's talk about the Mag 7 stocks, because that was the big highlight of the week last week, were earnings from 4 of the 7 companies. Meta, Microsoft reporting on Wednesday after the close, Apple, Amazon reporting on Thursday after the close. So for you, following those reports, what's your big takeaway on the overall reaction to all 4 of those, and then individually, which one stood out to you the most and was the most interesting when it comes to a report and for the future as well?
Sure. So the really big question about this earnings report was whether or not we were going to see any damage to the armor of the AI trade. From hyperscalers and from the semiconductor stocks. And so far, the resounding answer is no. Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, all are going to continue to spend. And at the same time, the earnings for those companies are going really well. And we're starting to see some revenue come into these companies from their AI CapEx spends. If anything, things are looking even better, because you can make an argument that you're finally beginning to see a reason to justify the AI CapEx spend. So far, everything has been great. I mean, Google got hit down initially, but their report was phenomenal. And now they've bought that thing all the way back up, which I'm not surprised to see. It was really when Amazon and Microsoft stepped in with their story that the market just turned back into full-on bull mode here for the Mag 7. Mag 7 names outside of Tesla have been trading phenomenally well, and I mean, that's just where we're at. Things are looking great. It's been an incredible earnings season so far. Companies are crushing it left and right. The earnings expectations are phenomenal, and what that has actually led to is this market, which has gone sideways for 3 months, as earnings expectations move higher, but price does not move higher. You've actually had multiple compression. So this market's getting cheaper too. There's a lot of reasons to be bullish right now.
Obviously, last week was a huge earnings week for the market, but you mentioned the semis, and they're in focus and underperforming some, and they're definitely going to be in focus this week because we're going to get a lot of reports from some of the key names in that sector. Earnings calendar this week full again. Palantir being the main highlight tonight after the close. But then on Tuesday, SpaceX will report their first earnings report after the close, so that's a big one. Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, being one of the chip makers reporting this week. Wednesday, we're going to get Western Digital and SanDisk. And then on Thursday, some other smaller, not smaller, but it's more software stocks. So we're getting lots of software stocks and semi stocks this week. So when it comes to this week's earnings reports, we got the reports from the hyperscalers, and we got the CapEx spend, and the spend is not slowing for the AI trade. And so with companies like AMD, Western Digital, SanDisk reporting, what's your focus into those reports this week from the actual makers of the memory and the chips, et cetera?
Yeah, so for me, AMD is the most important, with SanDisk and WDC right behind it. I think I've got my screen share available here if you want to pop over to it really quick. So I mentioned really briefly that the semiconductor chart is still a little bit of a concern. I think that positioning has washed out just with the research that I've been looking at enough where this chart can begin to improve and get better. But without a doubt here, if you're just analyzing the technicals of SOXX, it's in a downtrend. It's been relatively weak. Friday was an additional potential lower high in this pattern of lower highs and lower lows. Good snapback, good gap up, but just right into a declining 21 EMA. We closed on lows. So that's a potential lower high for, again, what is the most important sector. The question today in the morning meeting was, can this chart begin to improve with a higher low? So if you have a lower high and a higher low, what you begin to get is a wedge. And then that wedge either breaks up or it breaks down, but it's got the opportunity to break up. And if it does break up, it looks a lot better. So if we can get a higher low that comes in today, and then we can get above Friday's high, this SOXX chart is going to start looking significantly better. And I think that that's going to be enough to propel the SPYs to break out, which they're already attempting to do so, and this QQQ chart to continue to improve. But I think that in order to get real confirmation on this being a higher low for the SOXX, you're going to need the earnings report for AMD to go well. So AMD is very influential in the most important sector for the entire market right now, and it has the ability to either really improve this chart and get it to break higher and break Friday's high and just start looking a lot better, or it has the capacity to take a chart that's already been relatively weak recently, that's in a pattern of lower highs and lower lows, and just enable that weakness to continue, in which case I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for this market to actually break out, and it's going to need a little bit more time. So that's by far the most important one to me. IGV has already broken out. The breakout started on Friday. It's continuing today. Palantir is a big component in the IGV. Palantir has been a little bit weak. So we'll see, if this IGV breakout can get confirmed by a good Palantir report or not. But without a doubt, my eyes are all over these semiconductors here.
Obviously, so software and semis, but SpaceX is reporting after the close tomorrow. You and I have talked some about SpaceX since the IPO, of course, but since the IPO, where's the price today? Down at 110. Yep. And the pricing on the IPO was 135, so we are below the IPO pricing, and the high hit post IPO was what, 225.64. Definitely down from the high. So when it comes to SpaceX first report, it also, part of the lockup is also expiring this week. I think it's on Wednesday or Thursday, I think 20% of the lockup. So what about SpaceX this week, and what could happen in this name?
SpaceX has been one of the easiest shorts I can remember in just a really, really long time. I mean, this thing was a borderline scam. I mean, they just hyped the hell out of it in order to be able to transfer wealth from Elon Musk basically to retail individuals, and they can't even, the insiders can't even really sell yet, but the insiders are going to start to become unlocked this week, and the float is going to increase at a massive rate. It's going to be pretty interesting, and I've been short the entire way down. My price target's 94. I'm still short. I'm probably going to hold it into the report unless it gets to 94 prior to the report. But it's going to be interesting because on the one hand, I've been using Snap as a comparison. So Snap was a really, really hyped lockup expiration, and I'll try to find it on the chart here. So Snap IPO, it opened up at a really high price. It was super, super hyped, and I think that the lockup expiration was August 3rd here. If not August 3rd, then it was August 14th at basically this absolute low. And the thing about a lockup expiration is that it increases the tradable flow, and with SpaceX, it's going to increase it to a massive degree. It's going to, I think, like triple the tradable float. That's assuming that insiders actually sell. So it's going to add a lot of potential weight, but everyone knows that it's coming. And it was the same thing here with this Snap. They sold it down massively for the month into the lockup expiration, so that even though the lockup expiration should be really bearish for the stock, I remember giving my morning meeting the morning of Snap's expiration and saying, guys, I think that this is going to be like a sell the rumor, buy the news type of situation. And again, I'm not 100% sure if it was August 3rd or if it was August 14th. Pretty sure it was one of those two trading sessions, but we're
August
coming
14th.
in August 14th. Perfect.
Mhm.
It's the absolute low. That's
Yeah.
it couldn't be more perfect of again, sell the rumor, buy the news. Everyone knows that it's coming. Everyone's getting really down on the stock. And then after this thing couldn't catch a bid at all, it caught a huge move that day from 11:25 to a week or so later up at 15:30. SpaceX is going to be interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if SpaceX does something similar. Everyone knows that this lockup expiration is happening. They've been absolutely and utterly destroying the stock into it. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually end up buying it up on the expiration date. With that said, I don't think that we've ever seen a IPO with a lockup schedule as large as this in history. The initial tradable float here has been extremely tiny compared to what it's going to look like a year from now, after I think that they're going to continue to unlock more stock every 2 weeks. It's just going to enable more and more insiders to weigh this thing down. The fundamentals are still absurd here at $110, in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting one. My level one thinking thinks that this could be a repeat of Snap, where it actually gets bid up off of that. But I just wonder, with the extent of the increase in float, is that going to be possible? And maybe this just turns into a continuation of the failure that's already ongoing. So based on that uncertainty, I'm probably not going to really be doing anything new. I have been short this thing since over $200. My price target's 94. I keep being surprised, actually, that they've made this as easy as it has. I keep expecting a bigger bounce to come in. It will happen, I'm sure, eventually. But I'm not planning on doing anything new around the earnings report or the lockup. I'm just sticking with my $94 target. If we do get a big bounce off of it, I will probably short into that. If we sell off further, I'll cover stock down to 94, which is my target, and then reassess.
On the IPO, the IPO valuation was $1.77 trillion for SpaceX, which is bigger than some of the biggest companies in the world that actually have profit. SpaceX at this point still unprofitable. What can SpaceX say in their earnings report to justify that kind of valuation? Or can they?
I mean, look, Elon is a magician of hype. He's been that way for a long time. And actually, if you look at how Tesla's been trading, it almost seems like he's finally starting to get his comeuppance. He possibly just spread his cult members out a little bit too far between buying SpaceX and Tesla. And
yeah, because Tesla used to trade off of the SpaceX hype, right?
And Tesla just had a horrible earnings report.
Yeah.
It was one of the worst of the entire earnings season, and has justifiably been getting smoked here. So I don't know. I mean, Elon is a phenomenal storyteller. So we'll see what he's able to do. But the whole prospectus of SpaceX was the story. So I don't know what new stuff he can say. He can talk about the multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity that SpaceX is supposedly going to be able to capture by having data centers in outer space or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, this company is going to continue to spend a massive amount of money for revenue that can maybe come in 5 to 10 years from now, maybe. And we know that Elon has never had a deadline date that he's ever been able to meet ever, even with Tesla. So you know, we'll see what he says. We'll see what magic he can pull out of his hat this time around.
Mm-hmm. All right, and for everyone, again, that's tomorrow after the close. Just SpaceX will be reporting, so it's definitely one to be focused on this week. Somebody wants your analysis of gold, Derek.
Sure. I haven't been doing a whole lot with gold here. Gold is still moving kind of with risk assets. So in other words, what you're typically seeing is on days where the market is higher, gold and silver are higher, and days where the market is lower, gold and silver are lower, but yet it's been relatively weak to the market throughout that. You kind of have what's really a bear pattern here, but this bear pattern, given where the bigger picture has really come from, you could argue that this has just been a really large retracement of this up move, and that this, if you're a big enough picture, is actually bullish. So small time frame, this wedge is bearish. Big time frame, this wedge is bullish. I would argue it's probably 50-50. So just know where your support is and know where your resistance is. In the near term for GLD, it's like 365 on the support side, 380 on the resistance side. See which way it breaks. Personally, I really haven't traded gold or silver since the insane move that occurred back in December, January, February, which was just a phenomenal trading opportunity. Since then, this bleed out has just been really difficult. And it's also an asset that's just very, very gappy. So you have to be prepared for those large gaps and for your bigger picture thesis to be right or be wrong.
Sorry, I was still muted. On top of the earnings reports this week, it is jobs week for the market. The Fed met last week. There was all this talk going into the meeting that, oh my gosh, we might get a hike because things don't look so good. Did not get a hike. 93 rates unchanged. New inflation data on Friday showed the PCE price index falling on a month-over-month basis. That's the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. So now we look up the jobs market, the labor market, which is the other side of the Fed's mandate. Last year it had switched. Inflation was going fine, so they were really focused on the labor market. Now inflation kind of a problem again, and so the labor market, I think, less of an issue because it definitely maintained health at this point. So when it comes to Friday's jobs report, is it kind of a non-event for the market this week unless there's some huge surprise when it comes to the number?
Yeah, I think so. If we see that the jobs number were to really deteriorate worse than expectations for some reason, then all of a sudden it could matter a little bit. But what matters right now to the market and to the Fed is the inflation side of the mandate. The economy is humming along really well. The jobs market is doing really well, but inflation is way too high. I would argue that there's some things that the federal government that could do that could give us some inflation relief, but that doesn't seem to be occurring. We could get rid of tariffs. We could end this war that we're in. But until then, inflation is just too high, which really left a lot of people kind of scratching their head on why we didn't get a rate hike last week from Warsh. And I honestly thought it was a pretty bad initial press conference for Warsh. I mean, we've got a new Fed president here, and he just really struggled. In my opinion, I watched it live. He really struggled with the questions that were coming from the press. He just couldn't answer them. He was like, it basically, if interest rates are moving higher on their own and inflation is way too high, and you're saying we're going to get inflation down, how are you going to get inflation down if you're not actually taking action to get inflation down? So everyone's scratching their head on kind of why there was no hike. I think that doing a hike would have been the right thing. But I also said from the beginning that there wasn't going to be a hike, and I put a lot of money on it. It was the biggest Kalshi bet that I've ever done, that there was going to be no change on interest rates. And that's just because, unfortunately, this is the first Fed president in my career, maybe the first president ever, that is so clearly compromised and not independent based on the actions of the president of the United States. So it's just a real shame that we've kind of hit this point and that Warsh lost so much credibility and that he couldn't reclaim any of that credibility last week. But inflation is a big problem. But the fact of the matter is, inflation is only a big problem for the equity market if you actually begin to raise interest rates, because raising interest rates would reduce the multiple that the market trades at. Inflation in and of itself is actually good for the stock market as long as you're not hiking. It raises the price of everything. So it's not really that big of a deal if you have to pay higher prices for everything, if all of your assets, if your own assets are going up in price as well. So, you know, as long as you're an asset holder, as long as you're invested in the stock market, it's not that big of a deal, I guess, for you that inflation is higher, but it can at a certain point be really destabilizing to the economy, and we don't want to reach that point. So hovering at 3+% here, the inflation numbers is kind of in line with the historical average, maybe a little bit higher than the historical average. They need to bring it down, and they can't let it accelerate and get out of control.
Yeah. All right. I know your overall stance is bullish on this current market. I know sometimes it's hard to pick individual charts and names that you like, especially in a time like now with earnings happening, because things can kind of change on a daily basis with these names. But any setups that you currently like in this market and have on your watch list to get into?
I like the market as a whole. So I'll start with that. You know, if you look at the chart of the SPYs here, 3-month consolidation. That 3-month consolidation on a big picture is basically a 3-month bull flag. We got really ahead of ourselves here at the end of May, and we needed to cool off. And this is what this has been. It's been a positioning cool off here for a few months. People got way ahead of themselves with the semiconductors, with the leverage that they had in these semis, with the market as a whole. Now we've had 3 months for positioning to cool off. And while that positioning has cooled off, like I was just explaining, the market has actually gotten cheaper. So I'm looking at a bull flag in a market that's gotten cheaper, that has washed out a lot of positioning. There's a huge breakout here at this 756 to 760 zone. Hopefully doesn't break out from an area where the market's too extended. My base case is not for a repeat of like an April move, which was just the fastest up move basically in the history of the market. My base expectation is that this market's going to break out, but be in a little bit more of a grind higher. So I'm looking for the grind higher to come in this market on this breakout. But overall, I think it looks bullish as hell. The IWM looks fantastic if this TLT can stabilize a little bit. TLT getting destroyed lower, interest rates moving higher is a negative for the IWM. But if TLT can stabilize, I would argue that the IWM has held in better than you would have expected, given the amount of selling in the TLT, given how much interest rates have moved higher. So if that can stabilize, this strength in this IWM should be able to lead to a breakout as well. So it also looks phenomenal. The equal weighted S&P looks great. Recently broke out to new all-time highs. You have a higher low that came in potentially here last week. So the market as a whole looks fantastic. The missing piece is the NASDAQ. The missing piece is the semiconductors. And again, the Qs are looking much better, especially today that they're trading above Friday's high. And the semiconductors, we'll see what happens with AMD, but the positioning wash in the semiconductors has me very bullish on the space. So the chart doesn't confirm that yet. And I would say that you should be patient and wait for the chart to confirm things. But I like the idea of being long the semiconductors as well. I like the idea of I've been really bullish on these MAGS names, but after a 3-day move, there's no setup there. So we got to wait for the setup to come in on MAGS. We're going to wait for the setup to come back in. And Microsoft, I mean, the extension there is almost getting ridiculous. But when these setups can come back in, when these charts can heal a little bit, Amazon, here's another one. I like the idea of looking for all these things long off of bull flags, technical pullbacks, any setup that you can get until the story changes.
Just crazy, the like gaps on these Mag 7 charts. Just wild to look to see those kind of candles. All right, Derrick is a real trader, so I do want to let him get back to that. But again, he's the head trader at T3 Trading Group. So you can go to t3live.com/DOLive if you're interested in working with Derrick and his team there. Someone fill out the form there. Someone will get in contact with you. Again, all traders who work with T3 Trading Group as a prop trader do work with Derrick and his team on a daily basis in the ProDesk virtual trading floor. So again, Derrick, have a great rest of your Monday. Have a good week. Lots of big earnings to come. So we'll have lots to talk about in the future. And can't wait to hear your thoughts on the SpaceX report in the future. So
awesome.
Have a good one, Derrick.
Thanks, Greta. Talk to you soon.